William the Conqueror died in an unbelievably gruesome manner, but what happened to his body at the funeral was far more horrific. William came from Normandy in northern France, but few realized that the Normans were not truly French. They were descendants of Vikings. While William spoke French, his lineage was unmistakably Norse, a legacy of warriors and raiders. Before he became known as William the Conqueror, he carried a far less flattering title, William the Bastard. His father, Robert, was the powerful Duke of Normandy, while his mother came from much humbler beginnings. Despite their social divide, the two fell in deep love, but they could not marry, and thus William was born illegitimate. Yet, despite his illegitimate status, William inherited Normandy from his father. When he was still a teenager, a rebel named Guy of Normandy forced him to flee and declared himself Duke. William, however, was no helpless child. By the age of 18, he had spent nearly his entire life fighting for survival. Within a year, he returned to reclaim his title, supported by the King of France. Together, they marched north to crush Guy and his allies. William personally charged into battle, emerging victorious and proving that he was more than a boy defending his claim. He was a warrior, ready to wield his sword to protect what was rightfully his. William grew into a broad-shouldered, powerful man with a commanding presence and a deep voice. He spent most of his life in peak physical condition, demonstrating his strength time and again on the battlefield. This was no ruler who governed from a throne. He fought alongside his men and became renowned for his skill as both a warrior and a horseman. Even after reclaiming Normandy, enemies continued to rise against him, forcing him to spend the next decade fighting rebellions and sharpening his skill as a military leader. These campaigns earned him the conqueror's reputation that history would forever remember. Securing power, however, was not just about winning battles. Marriage could also consolidate influence and alliances. In 1049, William negotiated a marriage with Matilda, the daughter of Count Baldwin V of Flanders. This union would provide him with a powerful ally, but Matilda initially had no interest in marrying the illegitimate son of a duke. William was not a man who accepted no as an answer. When he first met her, Matilda rejected his proposal outright. William responded with remarkable ruthlessness. Before she could ride away, he grabbed her by the braids and pulled her from her horse. Despite this violent beginning, William and Matilda eventually married. Against all odds, their marriage proved to be remarkably loving, tender, and faithful. William never took mistresses and remained devoted to Matilda throughout her life. When he was away, he entrusted Normandy to Matilda, who skillfully managed the duchy and outmaneuvered countless nobles who sought to reclaim power. Despite its rocky start, their marriage became a true partnership. William's eyes were eventually set on a larger prize, the throne of England. While England might not have been his primary concern at first, events changed in 1051 when King Edward the Confessor named William as his heir. Edward's decision baffled many. William was a distant relative at best, Edward's uncle's grandson, yet the king intended to pass his crown to a foreign duke. This infuriated Godwin, Earl of Wessex, and father-in-law to Edward, who had long sought to secure the English throne for his own descendants. Edward died in January 1066, leaving a kingdom teetering on the brink of chaos. Though he had earlier promised the crown to William, he had changed his mind on his deathbed, naming Godwin's son Harold as successor. The English welcomed the choice, relieved to see one of their own on the throne. William, however, was far from pleased. He had been promised the crown, and he had no intention of letting go. Harold's coronation marked the beginning of a confrontation that would change England forever. By 1066, England had become a political storm. Rival factions contested the throne, making the kingdom resemble a real-life Game of Thrones. William watched and waited for the right moment. When Harold became king, William prepared for war. Entrusting Matilda with Normandy, he set sail for England with his forces. Upon landing, William established a base at Hastings, but Harold did not immediately engage him. To draw him out, William unleashed his army on the countryside, pillaging villages, burning farms, and leaving a trail of destruction. Unable to ignore the devastation, Harold marched south to confront William. On October 14, 1066, the Battle of Hastings began, a brutal contest that raged all day. Initially, the battle went badly for William. The English shield wall, positioned on a ridge, proved almost impenetrable, repelling Norman attacks and inflicting heavy casualties. Panic spread among the Norman troops. A terrifying rumor even reached their ears. William had been slain. The Norman army wavered, on the brink of collapse. William then did something extraordinary. He tore off his helmet, rode to the front lines, and proved he was alive. The sight of their commander reinvigorated the Normans, and with renewed determination, they turned the tide. Eventually, Harold fell, likely struck by an arrow in the eye, and with him, the English forces crumbled. William emerged victorious, leaving the bodies of the dead English soldiers where they lay, abandoned to rot. When Harold's mother offered to pay her son's weight in gold for his remains, William refused and had the body thrown into the sea, showing no respect for a so-called traitor. Yet, William's fight for England was far from over. The English, unwilling to accept a Norman king, rallied around Edgar the Atheling, the last heir of the House of Wessex. William responded with extreme force. He marched across the country, burning villages and devastating the countryside until the English surrendered. By early December, Edgar and other nobles swore fealty to William. This time, William showed measured mercy, allowing some lords to retain their lands and titles while stripping those who had fought him. On Christmas Day, 1066, William was crowned King of England. Even his coronation was chaotic. The cheers of Londoners panicked William's guards, who mistakenly believed a revolt was underway. Fires broke out across the city, turning what should have been a moment of glory into disaster. Nevertheless, William was officially king, and now he needed to secure his rule. After months of consolidating power, he returned to Normandy, leaving his half-brother Odo in charge. Rebellions erupted in his absence, with rivals and disloyal nobles challenging his authority. He had no choice but to return and restore order, and his efforts were relentless. Time and again, rebellions arose, including those led by his own son Robert. Father and son fought, reconciled, and reconciled again, a testament to William's persistence and Robert's ambition. William's reign was not without personal tragedy. His wife, Matilda, his closest ally and partner, eventually died, leaving him devastated. Despite his grief, William continued his campaigns, defending England from both internal revolts and external threats, including Scottish raids. In his later years, his once powerful physique had deteriorated. Aging and heavy, he struggled to mount a horse, yet he remained a formidable leader, commanding his troops in battle until the end. In 1087, during a campaign against his son's French allies, William's horse reared, slamming him against the saddle and rupturing his intestines. He survived for torturous weeks, but ultimately succumbed to his injuries on September 9, 1087. William's funeral was as tragic and grotesque as his death. His body, too large for the stone tomb prepared, burst when attendants tried to force it in, releasing a putrid odor that shocked all who attended. This was not the grand farewell one might expect for the man who reshaped England forever. Despite his tumultuous life, William the Conqueror's legacy endures. Every English monarch, from his successors to Queen Elizabeth II, can trace their lineage back to him. He remains one of the most famous and influential kings in English history. Yet William never truly saw himself as English. He was always the Duke of Normandy first, living the majority of his final 15 years in France. England was a conquest, a secondary domain, but through his ambition, ruthlessness, and strategy, he changed the course of history. William the Conqueror's story is one of survival, ambition, brutality, and triumph. From illegitimate beginnings to becoming one of the most powerful monarchs in Europe, his life was defined by bloodshed, strategy, and determination. He built castles, reshaped societies, and left a mark on England that cannot be forgotten. His life reminds us that power often comes at a terrible cost, but those who dare to seize it can change the course of nations.